People always believed Keanu Reeves was a man without secrets, a man who lived with honesty, silence, and quiet kindness. But they were wrong. He did have one secret, a secret he carried for 25 long years, a secret that followed him through every movie, every interview, every lonely night when the world was asleep, a secret that had a name: Sandra Bullock. And on this day, in a quiet studio far away from noise, he finally decided he could not hold it inside anymore. The interview had started normally. The host asked simple questions, laughed, and talked about Keanu's new film. The audience smiled, waiting for the usual calm answers. But then the host asked a question that changed everything. "Keanu, you have worked with so many amazing actors. Is there someone who has stayed in your heart all these years? Someone special to you?" The room fell silent. The lights felt brighter. The air felt heavier. And for the first time in the entire interview, Keanu's smile faded. He looked down for a moment, as if searching for courage on the floor. His fingers tapped quietly against his leg. He took a breath that trembled slightly. And when he finally lifted his eyes, there was a softness in them that no one expected. "Yes," he whispered. "There is someone." The host leaned closer. The audience shifted forward. Even the crew behind the cameras sensed something rare was unfolding. Keanu continued, voice gentle but full of something deep. "There is someone I care about, someone who changed my life without knowing it." The host asked softly, "Who is she?" Keanu hesitated for a long moment, as if saying the name would open a door he had kept locked for years. Then he said it in the quietest, most emotional tone anyone had ever heard from him: "Sandra." The host blinked, surprised. The audience held their breath. Keanu smiled, but the smile was sad. "I never told her what she meant to me," he said. "And after 25 years, it still stays inside me." The host asked, "What did you never tell her?" Keanu looked away, his jaw tightening slightly. "A lot," he whispered. "More than I should have kept silent." The host softened his voice. "What are you hiding from her, Keanu?" Keanu inhaled slowly, as if preparing himself for a truth that was too heavy to hold alone any longer. "I hid how she made me feel seen," he whispered. "I hid how she helped me survive some of the darkest parts of my life. I hid that her kindness saved me in ways she never knew." The entire studio froze. Keanu continued, voice shaking gently. "I hid that every time we worked together, every time she laughed, every time she looked at me with those warm eyes, something inside me changed. Something healed." He paused. His throat tightened. His eyes glistened, but he controlled his tears. "And I hid," he said softly. "That part of my heart never walked away from her." The host's voice trembled as he asked, "Why didn't you tell her?" Keanu's answer was a whisper filled with pain. "Because I was scared. Scared of ruining her peace. Scared of complicating her life. Scared that she deserved someone better than the man I was back then." The room felt small now, intimate, like everyone was inside Keanu's heart listening to 25 years of silence. Finally breaking open. The host swallowed. "Keanu, would you ever tell her now?" Keanu looked at the camera with eyes full of quiet courage and fear. "Yes," he whispered, "because she deserves the truth, and I deserve to stop hiding it." The host gently said, "And if she sees this?" Keanu breathed in deeply, then said the words that made the entire internet cry later that night. "Then I hope she knows. She was the woman who held a place in my heart for 25 years. The studio was silent. The host was speechless. Keanu lowered his eyes, realizing he had said the very thing he had avoided for decades. And somewhere far away, Sandra watched the interview replay on her phone, eyes wide, breath shaking, heart beating fast, because she realized something. This wasn't just a confession. This was a door reopening after 25 years. Sandra stared at her phone screen long after the interview ended. She didn't blink. She didn't move. She didn't even breathe properly. She replayed Keanu's words again and again, trying to understand how something this deep, this raw, this honest, stayed hidden for 25 years. Her fingers shook as she paused the video at the exact moment Keanu said, "Part of my heart never walked away from her." She whispered to herself, "Why now, Keanu? Why after so long?" She felt a storm building inside her chest. Confusion, warmth, sadness, shock. And something else she didn't want to name yet, something she thought she left behind decades ago. Her assistant knocked on the door gently. "Sandra, you okay? You've been quiet for a long time." "I'm fine," Sandra replied quickly, wiping a tear she didn't even know had fallen. I need a moment." When the assistant left, Sandra closed her eyes and leaned back against the couch. Memories began to rise. Memories she had buried so deeply she almost believed they never existed. She remembered Keanu's gentle smile during their early days of filming. She remembered the way he always listened without interrupting, the way he respected her space, the way he brought her warmth when she struggled silently with her own life challenges. She remembered the night they talked for hours in his trailer about fears, dreams, broken hearts, and healing. She remembered the way she felt safe, fully safe for the first time in years. And she remembered the moment she felt something more, something real, something she was too afraid to admit. Her voice cracked as she whispered to herself, "I thought I was imagining it. All of it." She pressed her hand to her heart, feeling an ache she recognized but hadn't felt in a very long time. But now she had to face the truth she avoided for decades. Keanu hadn't imagined it. She hadn't imagined it. It was real. And he finally said it out loud. Meanwhile, across the city, Keanu sat alone in his home, staring at the interview he just finished. He felt exposed, vulnerable, almost guilty. He wasn't used to opening up, especially not like this, and especially not about Sandra. He whispered to himself, "Maybe I said too much." He didn't regret the truth. He regretted the timing. He regretted that surprise might hurt her. He regretted that she might think he was trying to stir something that should stay peaceful. His phone buzzed once. A message. He didn't want to look. He was afraid it was the internet exploding, afraid of headlines, afraid someone would twist his words. But when he finally picked up the phone, the screen showed only one name. Sandra. His hands froze. She never texted him at random times, never late at night, never after emotional moments. Their contact was friendly but distant, rare but respectful. But tonight, she wrote to him. He opened the message with a breath he didn't realize he was holding. It said, "I saw the interview. Can we talk?" Keanu's heart dropped into his stomach, not out of fear, but because he felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in decades. Before he could reply, another message came. "I need to ask you something I should have asked years ago." Keanu stared at the screen, shocked. What question? Why today? Why after 25 years? His heart raced, because he knew there were only a few questions someone asks after hearing words like the ones he confessed, and one of those questions could rewrite the meaning of their entire past. He typed slowly, carefully, hands trembling just a little. "Yes, let's talk." "Name the place," Sandra replied almost immediately. "The old cafe. The one we used to go to." Keanu felt his breath catch. Their cafe. The quiet place where their connection had quietly grown, where they shared late-night tea, where their silence felt safe and full of meaning. He whispered, "You chose that place. Why?" But he already knew the answer. Some doors open only where they first began. Keanu put on his jacket and stepped toward the door. He didn't know what Sandra wanted to say. But he knew one thing for sure. Whatever she asked tonight, whatever truth she brought, it would change everything. Keanu arrived at the cafe earlier than planned. The moment he stepped inside, he felt his chest tighten. Nothing had changed. The same warm lights glowed softly, the same wooden tables creaked gently, the same faint smell of coffee and vanilla filled the air. It felt like stepping into a memory he had never fully healed from. He walked toward the corner booth, the place where years ago they shared quiet talks about life and pain and dreams. He sat down slowly, his hands clasped together on the table, trying to steady the storm building inside him. He whispered to himself, "Breathe, Keanu. Just breathe." He didn't know what Sandra wanted. He didn't know if she was hurt, confused, or feeling something she had hidden from herself just like he had. He only knew this meeting mattered deeply. Minutes passed. His heart pounded harder. Then the cafe door opened softly, and she stepped inside. Sandra walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the room until they rested on him. She looked different tonight, gentler, more vulnerable, carrying an emotion he had not seen on her face in years. She wasn't performing. She wasn't pretending. She was just Sandra, real, honest, human, trembling with something heavy inside her. She approached their table, her steps slow and careful. Keanu stood up immediately, unsure whether to hug her or wait or speak. But she reached out first, placing her hand softly on his arm. "Hi," she said quietly. Keanu's voice was soft but full of emotion. "Hi." They sat across from each other, both nervous, both silent, both unsure how to open a door that had been closed for 25 years. Finally, Sandra took a deep breath. "Keanu, I didn't call you here to question your feelings or make things complicated." Keanu nodded slowly. "I understand." She looked down at her hands. "I called you because hearing your words opened something inside me. Something I didn't expect. Something I thought I buried a long time ago." Keanu swallowed gently. "I never meant to hurt you." "You didn't," she said quickly. "You surprised me deeply, but you didn't hurt me." He watched her closely, searching her face for clues. Then she lifted her eyes, and they were shining, full of emotion she could no longer hide. "Keanu," she whispered, "there's something I need to ask you. Something I've carried for years." His heartbeat slowed, then sped up again. "Ask me anything," he said softly. Sandra looked away, gathering strength. "After all this time, after everything we lived through, after all the moments we shared, was there ever a day when you wanted to tell me the truth?" Keanu froze. She continued, her voice trembling. "Was there ever a moment when you almost told me you cared for me? That I meant something more? That you felt something deeper than friendship?" Keanu blinked slowly, emotion welling up in his eyes. He didn't answer right away. He couldn't. The memories she was pulling forward were heavy, beautiful, painful. Finally, he whispered, "Yes." Sandra stared at him. Breath caught in her chest. "Yes," Keanu repeated, his voice breaking. "More than once. There were times when I wanted to tell you everything. But I didn't, because I thought it would ruin what we had. Because I thought you were too bright for the darkness I lived in. Because I didn't believe I deserved someone like you." Her lips parted, but the words didn't come. Keanu leaned his elbows on the table, his voice gentle and honest. "There were nights I sat right here and thought about telling you, but I convinced myself silence was safer." Sandra wiped a small tear that slipped down her cheek. "Keanu, I need you to hear something. Something I should have said years ago." She reached across the table, her hand shaking slightly. He slowly placed his hand in hers. Their fingers touched softly, like two memories reconnecting. Sandra whispered, "I felt something too." Keanu stopped breathing. She continued, voice trembling, "I cared about you in a way I couldn't explain back then. I laughed differently with you. I felt safe with you. I saw a version of myself with you that I didn't see with anyone else." Keanu's eyes softened with shock and emotion. "But," Sandra said, tears building, "I never said a word. Because I was scared too. Scared of losing what we had. Scared of hurting you. Scared that life wasn't ready for us." Keanu held her hand tighter. She took a shaking breath. "And when I watched your interview, when I heard your voice say you kept something inside for 25 years, I realized one painful truth." Keanu whispered, "What truth?" Sandra's voice broke into a whisper, filled with years of silence finally cracking open. "That we were two people who cared for each other at the same time, but never brave enough to meet in the middle." Keanu felt a tear slip down his face. Sandra continued, "And I need to know, Keanu, if that silence changed the course of our lives." The cafe grew quiet. To quiet. The weight of her question settled between them like a fragile truth neither knew how to touch. And Keanu knew. The next sentence he spoke would decide how this story ends. Keanu felt Sandra's question settle deep inside him, heavier than anything he had carried in years. Did our silence change the course of our lives? He didn't answer right away. He couldn't. The cafe felt smaller, the lights dimmer, the air thicker, as if time itself was waiting for his next breath. Sandra watched him closely, her eyes full of a mixture of fear, hope, guilt, and tenderness. She wasn't asking to reopen the past. She wasn't asking for old love. She was asking for truth, real truth, the kind that hurts but heals, the kind she had avoided for 25 years. Keanu finally spoke, his voice low, steady, and broken at the same time. "Yes," he whispered, Our silence changed everything. Sandra closed her eyes for a moment, as if she had always known the answer, but hoped for something different. Keanu continued. There were so many moments when I stood close to you and felt something powerful, something I didn't understand. But I told myself to step back, to protect you, to protect myself. And that choice, that silence, pushed us onto different paths. Sandra looked down, her fingers trembling against the wooden table. I always wondered, she said softly, what would have happened if one of us had been brave enough to say something. Keanu nodded, his eyes filled with regret and softness. I wondered too, for years, but wondering is all I allowed myself to do. The cafe's soft music played in the background, creating a fragile soundtrack to their truth. After a long silence, Sandra spoke again, her voice shakier this time. Keanu, there's something I never told you either. Something that kept me silent. Keanu leaned in, listening carefully. Sandra exhaled slowly. During the time we were working together, I was going through something very painful, something personal, and I didn't want you to carry any of it. I didn't want you to feel responsible for my brokenness. Keanu's heart tightened. Why didn't you tell me? She looked up, eyes glistening. Because you were hurting too. I saw it, even when you smiled, even when you made everyone laugh. I saw how tired your soul was, and I didn't want to add weight to your shoulders. Keanu felt his throat close. He whispered, I wish you told me. I would have listened. She nodded softly. I know, but back then, I felt like we were two fragile people pretending to be strong, and I was scared that if we leaned on each other too much, we might both break. Keanu took a slow breath, absorbing her words. They were heavy, honest, and painfully true. Sandra's voice grew even softer. But the truth is, you helped me without even knowing. Your presence, your calmness, your kindness. You healed parts of me without trying. Keanu blinked away a tear that threatened to fall. You healed me too, he whispered. Their eyes met again, to wounded hearts that once walked side by side, both too afraid to admit they were holding on to each other in the dark. Sandra looked toward the window, her voice trembling. I think we both kept secrets because we thought silence was the safest choice. But silence became the thing that stole time from us. Double quotes. Keanu nodded slowly. Yes, it did. A single tear rolled down Sandra's cheek. She wiped it quickly, embarrassed. Sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to get emotional. Keanu shook his head gently. Don't apologize. You're being real. And for the first time in years. So am I. Sandra smiled sadly. I guess we both spent 25 years pretending we were okay with the way things turned out. Keanu answered quietly. Maybe we weren't pretending. Maybe we were surviving. A long silence followed, painful, warm, honest. Then Sandra straightened slightly, gathering courage. Keanu, I didn't ask you here just to talk about the past. There's something else I need to tell you. Keanu felt his heart stutter. What is it? Sandra's eyes softened, and her lips trembled before she spoke. When I watched your interview, I realized that the part of you I cared about back then is still the same part of you I care about now. Keanu felt the breath leave his lungs. But she wasn't finished. And there's something else, she whispered. Something I've never admitted to anyone. Keanu leaned in, unable to move, unable to breathe. Sandra's voice broke as she finally said the words. The truth is, I didn't walk away because I didn't care. I walked away because I cared too much. Keanu froze. The cafe faded, and Sandra whispered the final sentence that changed everything. And now I need to know, what would you have done if I told you that 25 years ago? Keanu's heart slammed inside his chest, because he knew the next words he spoke would rewrite everything between them. Keanu felt Sandra's question hit him like a quiet earthquake. What would you have done if I told you I cared 25 years ago? His breath became uneven. His hands slightly trembled, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the actress, not the legend, not the woman the world admired, but the person he once knew more deeply than he understood. He whispered, Sandra, that question isn't easy. She nodded, her eyes soft, but filled with fear she tried to hide. I know, but I need to hear your truth. I need to know what we almost became. The cafe felt unbearably quiet, like the whole world stepped aside to let them finally speak the words they buried for decades. Keanu took a slow, painful breath and said, "If you had told me you cared, I would have tried." Sandra's eyes widened slightly, her lips parting as her breath caught. "He wasn't done. I would have tried," he repeated softly, "even if I was scared, even if I felt broken inside, even if I didn't think I deserved someone like you. I would have tried, because you mattered to me in a way nobody else ever did." Sandra pressed a hand to her chest as if steadying her heartbeat. "Keanu," she whispered. He looked down, his voice rough with emotion. "I wanted to tell you so many times. There were nights I drove home thinking about calling you, telling you everything. But I convinced myself you were too bright for the shadows in my life. I told myself that your happiness mattered more than my feelings." Sandra wiped a tear quietly, her shoulders shaking. "You weren't a shadow," she whispered. "You were the light in so many of my dark moments." Keanu lifted his eyes, and something raw flickered within them. "We were two people trying to protect each other, but we protected ourselves right out of the truth." Sandra nodded, tears slipping freely now. "Yes, we did." Then she leaned forward, her voice almost breaking. "But Keanu, don't you see? You spent 25 years thinking you weren't enough for me, and I spent 25 years thinking you didn't want anything more." Keanu's chest tightened painfully. "I didn't want to lose you, and I didn't want to lose you either," she whispered. They stared at each other, two souls finally seeing how fear built a wall between them that neither dared to climb. After a long silence, Keanu's voice softened to a whisper. "So what now, Sandra?" She looked away briefly, wiping her face. "I didn't bring you here to start something," she said gently. "And I didn't come here to change my life or yours." Keanu nodded. Even though a small part of him hurt, "I came here," she continued, "because I needed to understand what we were and what we weren't." Keanu listened carefully as she took another trembling breath. "And because I needed to tell you something I should have said a long time ago." He leaned forward, heart racing. "Tell me." She lifted her eyes, raw honesty shining in them. "You were the person I trusted the most," she whispered. "The one person who saw me clearly, the one who made me feel safe, and the one I cared about more deeply than I allowed myself to face." Keanu felt something break gently inside him. But then Sandra said something unexpected, something that shifted the direction of their conversation entirely. "Keanu, I'm not here to reopen the past. I'm here because I want closure that heals us, not wounds us." He blinked slowly, processing her words. "We lost something back then," she said softly. "But maybe what we gained was even more important." "What did we gain?" Keanu asked quietly. Sandra's expression softened into a tender, emotional smile. "We gained a friendship built on honesty," she whispered. "We gained a bond that survived distance, silence, and time. And we gained a kind of love that doesn't need to be romantic to be real." Keanu felt warmth spread through his chest. Not painful, peaceful. But then she reached across the table and held his hand again, warm, gentle, steady. "And I need you to know one last thing," she said, her voice trembling. Keanu single quotes as heart thud dead double quotes what? He whispered. Her eyes softened as she spoke the truth that had been buried inside her for years. "If life had aligned differently, if timing had been kinder, you might have been the great love of my life." Keanu froze. Emotion swept through him like a wave too big to contain. His lips trembled. But before he could respond, Sandra whispered the final sentence that changed the entire room. "But the love we gave each other in silence saved both of us in ways we will never fully understand." Keanu felt tears rise. Everything inside him shook, and he knew the next words he spoke would decide how they walked out of this cafe. Keanu sat completely still after hearing Sandra's words. It felt like the entire world softened, like time slowed down just for them, giving space to the truth they had finally allowed to breathe. "You might have been the great love of my life." He never thought he would hear something like that. Not from her. Not after 25 years of silence. His eyes filled slowly, a warmth rising in his chest, painful but gentle, like a wound finally understanding why it existed. He whispered, "Sandra, I don't know what to say." She smiled through her tears. "You don't have to say anything. I didn't tell you this to start something new. I told you because it's the truth I kept inside for too long." Keanu nodded, breathing shakily. "I understand," She squeezed his hand gently. I don't want you to carry regret. And I don't want regret for myself either. That's why I needed you to hear this. The love we almost had wasn't a mistake. It was a quiet blessing. A soft place we both came from. Even if it never became more. Keanu felt her kindness settle inside him like a warm light. He realized something that shook him. He wasn't grieving the past. Not anymore. He was grateful for it. Deeply grateful. He leaned back slightly, wiping his eyes the way only someone strong and tender does. Sandra, there's something I need to tell you too. Something I never admitted, not even to myself. She looked at him carefully. What is it? Keanu took a breath that came from somewhere deep inside his heart. I spent years thinking I lost something important. But sitting here with you tonight, I realized I never lost you at all. Sandra blinked, touched in a way she didn't expect. You were always there, Keanu said softly. In my respect, in my memories, in the way I tried to be kinder, softer, better. Because you inspired that in me. You were part of the path that shaped who I became. And you still are. A tear slid down Sandra's face. Not from sadness, but from a feeling she couldn't explain. Keanu, thank you. He smiled gently. You don't need to thank me. You gave me far more than I ever gave you. She shook her head softly. No, we gave each other what we could. And that was enough. Then she let go of his hand slowly, with purpose. As if telling the universe the conversation had reached the place it needed to reach. She sighed quietly, a peaceful sigh. I feel lighter now. Me too. Keanu whispered. They both glanced around the cafe. Their cafe. The place where something tender once lived. The place where something honest finally ended, not with regret, but with gratitude. Sandra stood up slowly. I should go, she said softly. Keanu rose as well. I'll walk you out. They walked side by side toward the door. Their footsteps were slow, quiet, like to people who were saying goodbye to a chapter that shaped them deeply. Beautifully, silently. Outside, the night air wrapped around them. Gentle and cool. Sandra turned to him one last time. I'm glad we talked, she whispered. Me too, Keanu replied, his voice warm. She stepped closer and hugged him tightly, deeply, with a softness that held 25 years of unspoken emotion. It wasn't a romantic hug. It wasn't a longing hug. It was a thank you, a forgiveness, a release, and a promise. When they pulled away, Sandra whispered, You'll always be important to me. Keanu nodded, his eyes shining. And you to me, she smiled, a peaceful, honest smile that told him she would carry this moment forever. Then she walked toward her car. Keanu watched until she drove away, not with sadness, not with longing, but with a calm heart. The kind of calm that comes when two people finally tell the truth and set each other free. He looked up at the night sky and whispered to himself, some connections don't need to become a story to matter. Some are beautiful just for existing. And for the first time in 25 years, he felt whole.